Porque autoenseño. Why self-deception? It sounds like a contradiction or a paradox. If I use deception to steal 10 pesos from you, you lose 10 pesos, I get 10 pesos. But what is the purpose in me taking 10 pesos out of this pocket and putting the 10 pesos back in this pocket? That's similar to autoenseño. So I believe I've solved the problem in outline, and it's very simple. I believe that self-deception evolves in the service of deceit. That is, I'm better able to fool you if I have first fooled myself or rendered incorrect and false information to the conscious mind, kept the true information in the unconscious, or indeed thrown it away. So let me give you two examples of the argument. Let's say I'm arguing about something you actually care about. You're close to me, better yet, you know me. You can study the behavioral cues that go along with lying, with conscious deception. And we've heard about some of those in the conference here. Your voice will tend to rise, especially when you come to the key word, because you tense up your diaphragm. You'll make some irrelevant hand movements. Your brain is slowed down while you try to dream up of the falsehood and so on. But if you're unconscious that you're practicing self-deception, then those avenues of detection will be unavailable to you. My words will be surrounded with the sincerity that we associate with honesty. Let me give you a second related example. We are in the business of puffing ourselves up and making ourselves to appear better than we are. And it's easy to argue that if we also believe that, we'll be more effective at convincing you of this falsehood. So about 70% of us feel that we are better looking on average, which of course is impossible. But is that just our mouth talking? Is that just what we're flabbing our mouth to others? Or do we actually believe we're better looking than we are? I think the following work you will enjoy, because it demonstrates that something deeper is going on, that in our mind's eyes, so to speak, we really do think of ourselves as better looking. So here's the experiment that's going to be run, and I'll move back and forth because I'm going to use a pointer so both of you can see what I'm talking about. But the work was done by Epley, the man over here, and Whitchurch, the woman over here, okay? Now they stripped themselves of hair, and then they morphed the real face with increasing percentages of an attractive face, itself the average of several attractive faces picked out from a larger sample. So you can morph this female so she's got 20% of the better looking one, or here she's half and half. Likewise, you can morph her with someone that has facial cranial syndrome, which makes her uglier. So now she's 20% uglier, now she's half and half. Now we do the same thing for the man, Mr. Epley, but he's not too good looking to begin with, so we have to kind of shift the focus a little bit. But once again, whoops, wait a second, okay, good. They've made himself 20% better looking by using this face to morph him half and half and so on. Now, here's the game they play, and you have to imagine they're playing it with you. They've taken a picture of your face, and you're sitting in front of a computer screen, and blingo, suddenly you see 12 faces, one of which is yours. Your only job is, as soon as you see that picture, point to it, hit a button and then point to it. That corrects for errors. But they run the experiment several times, numerous times, and some of the times it's real you in the 12 pictures. Some of the times it's 20% better looking you, some of the times it's 20% uglier you. Which do you see first? Well, you see better looking you first. It takes 5% longer for you to see the real you, and it takes 5% longer to see ugly you. All right? More surprising, perhaps. Good. Whoops. Okay, good. More surprising, perhaps, if they show you all of these pictures. Whoops. Sorry. I'm just trying to learn how to run this damn thing. Whoops. Back. Come on, Roberto. Bueno. So anyway, if they show you all 11 pictures, including the real you, and they ask you which one do you think is you, then on average people choose a picture that's 15 to 20% better looking as the real self. If they ask you which picture do you most like, then people choose 20% better looking. So in our mind's eye, it seems as if we have an image of ourselves as being 20% better looking than we really are. And there's an important point here. Self-deception is bounded, just like we would expect it to be. 30% better looking may be implausible. 10% better looking, and you're not seizing the full advantage. Now, I don't need no damn social psychologist to tell me about this, because if I'm in a big city, I'll see this thing nearly every week or so. I'll be walking down the street with a young and attractive woman, not up to nothing, just wanting her to make me like me enough to allow me to remain nearby, right? So I'm walking along and chatting her up, and sometimes I spot on the other side of her an ugly old man, white hair, face falling apart. He's not even really walking, he's shambling. And then I realize, of course, that's me reflected in the store windows on the other side of her. So self-deceived me sees real me as ugly me. Now let me give you another example of recent work in social psychology that's more interesting than the older kind of work. There's two ways you can write E on your forehead. You can write an other-directed E so that you see the E, right? Or you can write a self-focused E, in which as I look through it, I see an E, but you see it backwards. Now, what's interesting is that your sense of power has a strong effect on which way you do it. Now, they use what's called a prime, and this is just a little trick and device which I'll skip to make you feel more powerful or less powerful. The effect lasts for a short period of time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but long enough for you to do some interesting experiments within that realm. So the first thing they see is that if you are made to feel powerless, then you rarely write a self-focused E. Most of the E's are oriented towards others. But if you're made to feel powerful, your tendency to write a self-focused E jumps up by a factor of 3. Now, there are more interesting correlates still. If you compare powerless and powerful, the powerful people have a harder time recognizing facial expressions. This is 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, angry, sad, disgusted. They have a harder time doing that correctly. Secondly, they have a harder time remembering which faces they've been recently shown out of a larger sample. And finally, they have a harder time taking someone else's viewpoint in a simulated interaction. So power is inducing a kind of blindness in the powerful. The powerless have got to pay attention to these variables. All right? So it's worse for men because men tend to be more overconfident than women do. Both sexes are overconfident in various domains, but in various of these domains, men are more overconfident than women overconfident. So a powerful man is both overconfident and ignorant. That's a bad combination. Now, I wonder if you could play the video I have, the first video. And this is relevant to the question of how soon does deception start in children? And we know it starts at about 5 months of age. And once again, I'm asking you to play, if you can, good, the very first video. Well, this is the second video. So you'll hear the father say, "Give him the evil eyes, son. Give him the evil look." Now that's his real look. Like, what the hell's going on over there? Now we'll recycle through it. It's the same footage. But first the father says, "Give him the evil eyes, son."
Give him the evil look.
So this little boy has learned to use a facial expression in a novel context for a novel effect. Now, see if you're able to play this. Oh, good. Now, we know that children start deceiving their parents when they're 6 months of age. They cry out of context. This child was crying mercilessly there, pain. Dolor, sufrimento, you know? Your heart goes out to him. Now his audience leaves the room. So you can stop the video now. This boy will do it all afternoon, trust me, but this is Ciudad de Ideas and time is short. Good, thank you. So let me go on to the next slide here. I hope. Okay, now this is an extremely important result. The smarter your child is, the more the child lies. Okay? Now, what they have is they've taken 4-year-old children and they've given them a little intelligence test or cognitive test, and they've spread them out from relative. What the hell am I doing here? I'm hitting the wrong damn button, sorry. So they've spread them out here from relatively slow to relatively bright, and this is a measure of how often they lie. What's the experiment? The child is sitting in a chair. There's a box behind the child. In comes the experimenter, opens the box, puts something in it, and shuts the box, and then says to the child, "Do not look. I'm leaving the room for 2 minutes. Do not look." And then they walk out and watch the child. And most of the children look. Then they come back in and they say, "Did you look?" And most of the children lie. But the point is, the smarter they are, the more often they lie. So if you have a bright child, that child's going to lie 100% of the time. If you have a slower child, just 65% of the time. The same thing is true of monkeys and apes in adulthood, in which the measure here is the size of the brain, corrected for body size, or the neocortex works slightly better this size. And what you see across all monkeys and apes is the bigger that relative neocortex size along here, the more often they're seen lying in nature. So intelligence is associated in children and at least adult monkeys and apes with lying more often. By logic, it may be associated with more self-deception, but that's conjectural. We would wish it were otherwise. We think of ourselves as smarter than average, but we also may be more self-deceived. You can use your brain power to apprehend truth, and you can use your brain power to produce falsehood, often unconsciously generated. Okay, I'm going to end with this one last example that I think will amuse you. It's a classic case of denial, projection, and then attack on those that you're projecting. Okay, this work was done on A1 heterosexual men in Georgia. What's an A1 heterosexual man? He has never had a homosexual experience. He has never had a homosexual fantasy. He hasn't even had a homosexual thought, or so he says. Then you bring him into the lab, and you give them a little scale that separates them according to how hostile they are to homosexuals. So some men are angry and aggressive and they want to hurt them and blah, blah, blah. Others are relaxed, right? So you split them into those two groups. Then comes the fun part where you show them dirty movies and you tie a plethysmograph to the base of the male's key organ here so that you can measure exactly its increase in size. All right, so we've got 6 minutes of a man and a woman making love. This is a pornographic film. You can see that the man's wood, or whatever you want to call it, grows admirably throughout. If anything, after 6 minutes, it's still growing. Now, there's no difference. There's no statistical difference between these two, so I won't tell you which is which. Now you're watching two women making love, and the organ here starts to grow admirably, and then it tapers off. Again, there's no statistical difference here. Now you're probably guessing what's down here. These are the men who are non-homophobic. They're relaxed about homosexuals. They're not frightened of them, and they don't want to beat them up or kill them. They show a slight and statistically insignificant increase in penile size. Now, here are the ones who are hostile to homosexuality. The penis starts growing. It starts taking off here. It's still rising. They're 2/3 of the way up to watching two lesbians. Okay? Now, if you ask these men in all these situations to guesstimate the size of their enlargement, then 5 out of 6 are accurate. These two are accurate, these two are accurate, that guy down there is accurate. The only one that is inaccurate is the one that's showing arousal who is hostile to homosexuals. He denies any arousal. Now in the US, we know this is a monthly occurrence. Politicians or preachers who have taken strong stands against homosexuality get outed. It may be in a men's room in a Minneapolis airport. It may be one of these mega preachers that takes young men off to special sessions to get to know Jesus and himself better. Okay. So, let me just try to summarize these comments, both in English and in Spanish, if I can. This is a topic we can all participate in all our lives and whatever our discipline is. The logic is simple, the topic is universal. O en español, todos podemos discutir el autoengaño, la lógica es simple y los afecta a todos. Now, I want to say one final thing about this conference. This is the most extraordinary conference I've been to in my entire life, and that's 40 years of going to conferences. It is not just the high quality of the people that you have brought here, it is the diversity. Craig Venter, stone crazy, talking about sending molecules to Mars, but it'll be happening. He's probably dead on. Or the beautiful woman from Yemen who was a journalist. So, or we've had actors, we've had artists, we've had singers, we've had someone that hears colors and so on. So there's been a huge diversity of high quality acts here and a gorgeous audience. I'm not sure I've ever spoken to this many people. So let me just end by saying, Viva la Equidad de Idea, Viva la México, y Viva la Virgen de Guadalupe.
Gracias, gracias, muy amable. Thank you very much.